You missed it. Last night, Kevin got a gig. Kevin Stefanski has found himself a job, such a...
If you thought you'd seen it all, think again. Last night, the NFL didn't just whisper, it detonated. One shock deal, one furious backlash, and one name suddenly caught in the crosshairs. This is Spill News, where secrets explode before your eyes, and tonight's story cuts deep. It starts with the Atlanta Falcons, a late-night decision, and owners who didn't just disagree, they exploded. Then comes Shedeur Sanders, the rising quarterback whose future now feels like a chess piece on a board he never agreed to play. Add Kevin Stefanski to the mix, a coach with unfinished business, and whispers that won't die, and suddenly the timeline stops making sense. Allegedly, the internet couldn't believe it, and you won't either. Screenshots flew, group chats lit up, a blogger posted, deleted, then posted again. Someone close to the situation allegedly said, "Bro said too much and they got him." And when Deion Sanders' name started trending for all the wrong reasons, the tension went nuclear. So let me ask you this. If you were in this position, same betrayal, same pressure, same stakes, what would you do? Stay quiet, fight back, or expose everything? Because we're about to break it all down. And trust me, it gets uglier. Tonight, the night everything changed didn't start with a press conference or a tweet. It started with silence. The kind of silence that only exists right before something explosive happens. Somewhere between late-night calls and locked boardroom doors, the Atlanta Falcons made a decision that would send shockwaves through the league. By morning, the NFL wasn't just talking. Owners were furious. Executives were scrambling. And one name, quietly but deliberately, was being pushed into the center of the storm: Shedeur Sanders. To understand why this moment matters, you have to rewind. Way back before the rumors, before the alleged backroom deals, before the phrase controversial move started trending, there was a young quarterback trying to survive in a league that chews up confidence faster than it builds careers. Shedeur arrived with expectations already stacked against him, not just because of his talent, but because of his last name. The son of Deion Sanders was never going to be treated like everyone else. Every throw was scrutinized, every mistake magnified, every success quietly minimized. Inside Cleveland, things were already tense. Sources close to the situation would later claim that trust between the quarterback room and the coaching staff never fully formed. Practices felt colder, communication felt forced, and decisions on Sundays raised eyebrows. Fans noticed patterns. Commentators whispered, but nothing was ever confirmed. Everything stayed in that dangerous gray area where speculation thrives and facts stay just out of reach. At the center of those whispers was Kevin Stefanski. Publicly, he was a professional, the strategist, the coach who had been praised in the past for discipline and structure. Privately, critics began to question whether his vision ever included Shedeur at all. Allegedly, that word matters, because no one produced a smoking gun, no leaked memo, no recorded conversation, just patterns, decisions, and a growing sense among supporters that something wasn't right. Then came the firing. Cleveland moved on. Or at least, that's what it looked like on the surface. In reality, the coaching carousel spun faster than anyone expected. Interviews piled up, meetings were scheduled, and suddenly, the same coach some believed had overseen a disastrous situation was no longer radioactive. He was in demand. 7 interviews, according to reports, multiple follow-ups, and then Atlanta. What happened next is where the story takes a turn that even seasoned NFL observers didn't see coming. The Falcons didn't hesitate. They didn't slow play the process. They didn't sleep on it. According to multiple accounts, the courtship was aggressive, personal, and decisive. The kind of move that makes other owners stop and ask questions. Why the rush? Why this coach? Why now? Behind closed doors, frustration boiled over. Owners who had expected a more cautious hire allegedly felt blindsided. Some believed the timing was reckless. Others felt it sent the wrong message. And a few reportedly wondered whether this was more than just football. Because when you line up the timeline, the consequences don't land on Atlanta first. They land on Cleveland. And more specifically, on Shedeur Sanders. Social media caught fire. Blogs speculated. Radio hosts ranted. The phrase "league politics" started popping up in comment sections. And then came the theories. Some mild, some extreme. The loudest one asked a question that refused to go away. Was this just a coaching hire, or was it a signal? A message about who gets protected, who gets promoted, and who gets left exposed. For Shedeur, the fallout was immediate. His future suddenly felt less stable, not more. A new coaching search. Uncertainty at the top. Rumors of interim solutions and bridge hires. Every scenario carried risk. Development delayed. Systems changed. Confidence tested again. And while none of this was officially tied to Atlanta's move, the optics were impossible to ignore. Supporters pointed out the irony. A coach removed from one situation allegedly failing a young quarterback, now stepping into a new environment stacked with talent and patience. Critics called it failing upward. Defenders called it a fresh start. The truth, as always, sat somewhere in between. But perception matters in the NFL, and the perception was ugly. As the league reacted, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about wins and losses. It was about power, about narratives, about who controls the story when things go wrong. And in this story, Shedeur Sanders didn't get to write his own chapter. He was reacting to moves made far above his head. By the end of that week, the outrage hadn't cooled. If anything, it had sharpened. Analysts began digging into past decisions. Fans replayed old games with new suspicion. And insiders hinted that what the public saw was only the surface. Because according to those whispers, Atlanta's hire wasn't the end of the story. It was the opening move. And what came next, even the people who supported the decision, didn't fully expect. The outrage didn't stop with talk shows and timelines. It moved inward into the spaces fans never see. Private group chats between executives, late-night calls between agents, text threads that started with football and drifted into something darker. Because once people calmed down enough to actually look at the sequence of events, the scandal wasn't just emotional anymore. It started to look coordinated. Or at least, that's how it felt to the people watching from the outside. Here's where the story shifts from confusion to suspicion. Kevin Stefanski didn't just land on his feet. He landed in luxury. Reports began circulating that his interview process wasn't a grind, but a coronation. 7 teams showed interest for reportedly wanted second interviews. And Atlanta didn't want to let him leave the building. Allegedly, the owner himself hosted him, wining and dining, selling a vision that felt less like a pitch and more like a reward ceremony. That detail alone made heads turn, because in a league that claims to be ruthless, very few people get treated like that after a public failure. At the same time, Cleveland was spiraling, not publicly, but internally. The coaching search widened instead of narrowing. Names floated, disappeared, reappeared. Defensive minds, offensive minds, bridge candidates, temporary solutions. Nothing screamed stability. And for a young quarterback who desperately needed continuity, that uncertainty was brutal. Fans noticed the contrast immediately. One coach moving forward with confidence and backing. One quarterback stuck waiting, watching a situation become less clear by the day. That's when the language online changed. It stopped being about bad coaching decisions and started becoming about motive. People began using words like setup, message, and example. Blogs speculated that the league had never been comfortable with the idea of Shedeur Sanders succeeding on his own terms, not because of his play, but because of the spotlight he brought with him, because of who his father is, because of how loud that story would be if it worked. Screenshots of alleged private messages started making the rounds. None verified, none confirmed, but they all told the same story. Frustration with the media circus, concerns about branding, fear of losing control of the narrative, and at the center of it all, a rookie quarterback who didn't fit neatly into the mold the league prefers. Whether those messages were real or not almost didn't matter. They fed a belief that was already growing. Then came the alleged staff raid. Rumors surfaced that Stefanski wasn't planning to start fresh in Atlanta. He was planning to bring familiar faces with him. Names tied to Cleveland's offensive struggles. Coordinators who critics felt were complicit in the situation that stalled Shedeur's development. The idea that the same group could move on together, leaving behind chaos while stepping into a better-built roster, poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Fans reacted fast. Some laughed bitterly. Some raged. Others resigned themselves to the idea that this is just how the NFL works. Fail upward. Protect the system. Blame the player. Radio hosts leaned into the sarcasm. Terrible coach, one said, dripping with irony. Nobody wanted him. The audience knew better. Everyone knew better. The joke wasn't funny because it felt true in the worst way. As the scandal spread, fake investigative reports began circulating online. Anonymous league sources claimed the Falcons' move had been discussed long before the firing. Others suggested informal assurances had been made. Again, nothing provable. But the sheer volume of similar claims made them hard to ignore. And when mainstream outlets avoided the story, that silence only fueled the conspiracy further. To some fans, the lack of coverage was a restraint. It was suppression. The tone shifted again when analysts started breaking down game film. Clips resurfaced. Moments where play calling seemed questionable. Situations where safer options were ignored. Red zone sequences replayed with commentary, accusing the staff of intentionally limiting the quarterback's success. Whether that interpretation was fair or not didn't matter anymore. It fit the narrative. And once a narrative fits, it spreads faster than facts. Social media did the rest. Viral tweets, reaction videos, threads connecting dots that may or may not exist. One post summed it up bluntly. How do you go from problem to prize overnight unless the league wanted you there? That question echoed everywhere. And every time it went unanswered, belief hardened. Meanwhile, Atlanta fans celebrated. New coach, new energy, new hope. And that contrast made everything worse. Because while one city looked forward, another felt abandoned. Cleveland supporters debated whether this reset could actually help Shedeur. Some argued that a clean break was necessary, that getting rid of the entire regime might finally give him a fair shot. Others feared that the instability would just add another lost year to his development. The loudest voices weren't analysts or insiders. They were fans who felt betrayed by a system they already didn't trust. To them, this wasn't football politics. It was personal. A young quarterback put in a bad position, then blamed when it didn't work. A coach shielded from consequences. And a league that, intentionally or not, seemed to send a message about who gets protected. By the time the dust settled, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a hiring. It was a turning point. The scandal had evolved from outrage to obsession. And just when it seemed like the conversation had reached its peak, another layer emerged. One that shifted the focus from conspiracy to consequence. Because the real fallout wasn't happening in Atlanta boardrooms or owner meetings. It was happening inside the mind of a quarterback forced to rebuild his future while the league debated his worth. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, the way pressure always does when no one is watching. While the league argued about optics and timelines, while fans debated conspiracy versus coincidence, Shedeur Sanders was left alone with the consequences. No headlines followed him into the facility. No viral tweets explain how it feels to prepare for your future when every variable keeps changing. Just silence, meetings, and the weight of knowing that the next move might define your entire career. People close to the situation say the emotional toll was real. Confidence doesn't vanish overnight. It erodes. One decision here, one delay there, a new voice in the building, a new system to learn. Another reminder that development in the NFL is a luxury, not a guarantee. For a young quarterback already fighting the shadow of expectations, the uncertainty felt like punishment for something he never did. Allegedly, outside, the narrative hardened. Stefanski's new chapter in Atlanta became the measuring stick. Every positive report out of Falcons camp was framed as salt in the wound. Analysts praised the roster fit. Commentators talked about fresh starts and better situations. And each compliment landed like an accusation. If he succeeds there, what does that say about what happened in Cleveland? Was it personnel or was it preference? The league never answered those questions. It rarely does. There was no investigation announced, no statement addressing the outrage, no effort to clarify intent, and that absence became its own storyline. To critics, the silence felt calculated. To defenders, it was just business as usual. But for fans already convinced something was wrong, it confirmed everything they feared. Systems don't explain themselves when they work as designed. Meanwhile, Cleveland moved forward, slowly. Interviews continued. Names leaked. Defensive continuity was discussed. Offensive innovation was promised. The word bridge hovered like a threat. Every potential hire came with a new set of risks. A defensive coach might stabilize a locker room, but delay offensive growth. A young offensive mind might unlock potential, but lack authority. None of it felt secure. And for Shedeur, security was the one thing he needed most. Then something unexpected happened. The conversation began to shift, not because the league changed its stance, but because fans did. A counter-narrative emerged, one that argued this chaos, as painful as it was, might actually be a reset, that removing the previous regime, even under controversial circumstances, could open a door that had been shut from the start, that sometimes being pushed out of a bad situation is the only way forward. Clips resurfaced showing flashes of what Shedeur could be under pressure. Tough throws, late game drives, moments of poise that didn't fit the failed prospect label. Supporters pointed to those plays and asked why they weren't the focus before. Why patience ran out so quickly? Why development seemed optional when it came to him? Those questions didn't need answers to resonate. They just needed to be asked. As weeks passed, the anger cooled into something more dangerous: resolve. Fans stopped waiting for validation from the league. They started demanding opportunity. They framed the story less as sabotage and more as survival. A young quarterback against a system that doesn't bend easily. A test of whether talent can outlast politics. Whether persistence can beat perception. Atlanta, for its part, moved on. New installations, new staff, new optimism. Stefanski was no longer the villain there. He was the solution. And that contrast remained uncomfortable because it meant two truths could exist at once. A coach could be competent. A situation could still be mishandled. And a player could suffer without anyone technically doing anything wrong. By the end of it all, there was no smoking gun, no leaked email proving coordination, no confession, just a trail of decisions that, when lined up, told a story people couldn't unsee. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was politics. Maybe it was just the NFL being the NFL. But for Shedeur Sanders, the impact was the same. Another uphill climb. Another season where proving himself mattered more than protecting himself. And here's the twist no one expected. In stripping away the noise, the doubt, and the false security, the situation may have given him something dangerous. Clarity. No illusions. No guarantees. Just talent, work, and the understanding that nothing will be handed to him. Sometimes the system doesn't break you. Sometimes it reveals you. So the league moves on. Owners reset. Coaches rebrand. Fans argue. But the secrets don't disappear. They linger in timelines, in group chats, in the quiet moments before kickoff. And whether this was a coordinated move or a series of cold decisions, one thing is certain. This story isn't over. Because as long as Shedeur Sanders is still fighting for his place, every snap, every decision, and every success will reopen the same question the league never answered. Now here's where it gets real. Because everything you just heard leads to one unavoidable truth. This wasn't just a coaching change, and it definitely wasn't just another NFL headline that disappears in a week. This was a moment that exposed how fragile a young player's future could be when power, perception, and politics collide. One decision set off a chain reaction. One hire shifted multiple careers. And one quarterback was forced to carry the weight of it all. So ask yourself this: was it coincidence or was it calculated? Was this just the NFL doing business the way it always has? Or did we witness a quiet move that sent a message louder than any press release ever could? Because when a coach walks into a better situation overnight and a young quarterback is left navigating chaos, people are going to ask questions. And once those questions start, they don't stop. What do you think really happened here? Do you believe this was a controversial but normal league move? Or do you think Shedeur Sanders was put in an impossible position from the start? Was this failure, favoritism, or something much deeper that the league doesn't want to talk about? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is bigger than one team and bigger than one season. And don't walk away just yet. If you're watching this, you already know the story isn't finished. Coaching moves are still coming. Decisions are still being made behind closed doors. And the next chapter of Shedeur Sanders' career could flip this entire narrative on its head. Hit that like button if you believe players deserve a fair shot. Subscribe if you want the stories they don't break down on TV. Turn on notifications, because we're tracking every move, every rumor, and every twist that impacts this saga. Stay locked in. This story is far from over.